Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatim Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharne. Anyone who, well, I guess most of us put on our video, but it would be best if everyone could put on their video if it's possible. Today I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 12, Devotional Service, text number 9. Ata chitam samadatum nasakshnosi maistiram abhyasena yogena tato mam ichtantum dananjaya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regular principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to obtain me. Now, of course, we can go back, before I read the purport, to the previous verse, because this verse refers to the previous verse. Mayeva mana adatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivashishashi maeva, atta oravam samshaya. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you'll live with me always without a doubt. And Prabhupada writes in this purport, which is very short, so I'll read it. One who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relation with the Supreme Lord. So there's no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane, he lives in Krishna. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. Therefore, when a devotee chants Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts these edibles. And the devotee becomes Krishna-ized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. At the very beginning of this chapter, Arjuna was asking Krishna, which is better, to engage in your devotional service or to engage in meditation on the impersonal Brahman? And Krishna, of course, has confirmed that the best thing is to fix his mind upon, that the devotee should fix his mind upon Krishna. As text 2 says, in the same chapter, Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their mind on my personal form and always engage in worshiping me with great transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. So we can understand what those who are engaged in devotional service, trying to become conscious of Krishna, we can understand that the aim of our devotional service, or the perfection of our devotional service, is to fix our mind upon Krishna. Now, I imagine most of us cannot fix our mind upon Krishna, even if we were aware of the fact that that's what we're supposed to be doing. Therefore, in text 12 of the same verse, which we're reading today, Krishna says, the translation, if you cannot take to this practice, text number 9. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regular principles of bhakti yoga. This way, develop a desire to obtain me. Significant, Krishna uses the word ichcha. Ichcha means desire. Although we're engaged in a regular service, for instance, as Prabhupada explained in the purport, chanting a certain number of rounds a day, worshiping the deities, etc., as a regular principle. Often the devotees, they say they don't have a taste for these activities. Well, if we had a taste for the activities, we'd be liberated, beyond liberation. But most of us, if we look into the mirror and ask who we are, we don't see a spirit soul 1/10,000th the size of tip of Aaron's size, and then the smaller inside the heart of that soul, we see a little four-armed person with a helmet, with club, disc, lotus, and conch in his hands. Therefore, it's probably not very surprising we don't always have a taste for chanting the holy name or for performing devotional service. But that takes some intelligence to understand that not having a taste doesn't mean that we don't do it. There's many things we have a taste for which are actually not very beneficial for us. Just like after we had eaten a big feast and someone comes around with another preparation and we see our worst enemy taking it, then we feel obliged that we have to take that preparation also, just to make sure that we're in the proper competition with our worst enemy. Unfortunately, there's probably not enough space within our body to eat that particular item, and therefore, although we may have a taste for it, it's probably not very good for us to follow the taste. Or as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that which is in the beginning is bitter like poison, and the end was like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. And that which in the beginning may be just like nectar, but at the end is like poison, which is born of contact with the senses, with their objects, is said to be the mode of passion. Therefore, there's something called tolerance. If we keep in mind that we're eternal souls and that our objective is to enter into the eternal realm, then Krishna says to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, your duty right now may not be very pleasant. After all, I'm sure you're not looking forward to killing your grandfather and your teacher, Dronacharya. But that's your duty, and it'll be in the long term beneficial for them, for you, and for everyone else. But even if you don't feel like it, you have to tolerate your materialistic consciousness and do what's actually will be purifying to you and ultimately beneficial for everyone else. So for Prabhupada writes in the purport, in this verse, two different processes of bhakti yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who's actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. That comes after a stage called, that's perfectional stage, called Bhava Bhakti, which before that, or preliminarily to that is called asakti, when the mind is fixed on Krishna. And even for a moment, if it deviates from thinking about Krishna, immediately it goes back to think about Krishna spontaneously. I think most of us find that if we try to think about Krishna, we maybe succeed for a moment, and then the mind rapidly goes away from Krishna. Therefore, sadhana bhakti is necessary just to remind us what we're supposed to be doing in this lifetime. And the next Prabhupada writes, and the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for Krishna, for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For the second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified. And in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master is also not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there's no question of love. But for spiritual life, one must be elevated to the purest stage of love. That state of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses. This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart, and their love of God is manifested in different ways, but is contaminated by material association. Now the heart has to be purified of the material association, and that dormant natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That is the whole process. To practice the regular principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. One should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple and offer prayers and chant Hare Krishna. Then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook foodstuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations which one should follow, and one should constantly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice will help anyone rise to the level of love of God, and then he is sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice, Bhakti Yoga, under the rules and regulations, with the direction of a spiritual master, will surely bring one to the state of love of God. When I first joined the movement in 1968, as I may have said before, at that time when I came to the temple, there was a Srimad Bhagavatam class from Srila Prabhupada's first canto. But it wasn't so much of a class as simply reading Srimad Bhagavatam. There was no Mangalarti because we didn't know what Mangalarti was. Getting up in the morning, our austerity was to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning at that time. We didn't really worship the deities because we didn't know who they were. We had Lord Jagannath, Lord Baladev, Srimati Subhadra Devi, but at least I, as the head pujari, wasn't quite sure who they were. Nor did we know how to worship them. The only worship we did for them was to offer our prasadam to them. As Srila Prabhupada did at the beginning, at 26 Second Avenue, it was called bells. He'd ring a bell and offer incense to the deities, and that would be the offering of the prasadam. Now, one day, my temple president, Rupanuga Prabhu, called up Brahmananda Prabhu, who was traveling with Srila Prabhupada at that time, and Srila Prabhupada told him, Brahmananda told Rupanuga Prabhu, that we did what was called arti today. Arti was, Prabhupada had his Radha Krishna deities that he was traveling with, and he told us the ingredients that were used to worship Radha and Krishna. There was some incense and some water and a handkerchief and a flower and a fan. And I was a Hipajari, so I decided we'd have an arti, our first arti in the Buffalo Temple. We didn't find out, as I've said before, exactly how long the arti should be, so our first arti was for 3 hours. Each item, the incense, practically speaking, we offered it until it burnt down. The next was some water, or we didn't have a ghee lamp, or we may have had a little ghee lamp, but not the full ghee lamp. So each item usually took around 20 minutes to offer. And so it took around 3 hours to complete the first arti. I thought that was a little long because I had to go to college at that time. It seemed a little impractical, especially if we had had it twice a day. It would take up most of our day. So we further inquired and found out it only had to last around 30 minutes, 25 minutes. Well, that took a little while, so although the first arti I did was for 3 hours, the second one was only for 2 hours. I thought that was more reasonable. Then we didn't have a Bhagavad Gita, so there's no question of having a Bhagavad Gita class. That didn't come until probably a year later. Srimad Bhagavatam class, there was a class given by the temple president, but he had to work, so he gave it usually at the university, maybe 3 times a week. Not exactly Srimad Bhagavatam, but just the philosophy. But gradually, when we got more information, then we had a artik in the morning, and I think it was some time before we started to get up at least 3 o'clock in the morning and have arti at 4:30. That must have been at least a few years later, a couple of years later. And full morning program, I didn't do that for a couple of years because I had to go to college. So we just had a shortened morning program, except for the little time that I was offering RT for a few hours a day. Then I think it took some time before the whole morning program was established. Rupanuga in 1971, I believe, Rupanuga went to LA, Los Angeles, from Buffalo, which is 3,000, like 5,000, 4,000 kilometers from Buffalo. And there, Prabhupada introduced the Nrsimhadev prayers, which we were supposed to chant 3 times, I don't think anyone ever does that. But at least we started to do it at least once. And then gradually the full morning program was there. We'd have get up in the morning and have RT, then chant our rounds, chant japa, then have a class. Guru Puja was introduced a little bit later also, not exactly immediately. In any case, once the morning program was established in the temples, then by that time I was with Radha Damodar. So we had a rather unusual morning program because most of the day we were distributing books in different times. For instance, uh, sometimes we'd have to travel the whole day to go to our next place, and therefore we didn't always have a full morning program in the morning. But we had something. For some time there, we were also selling flowers at concerts. So that meant people started the concert at 1 o'clock, at 11 o'clock in the evening, and we'd be distributing till like 4 or 5 in the morning. So there was no question of a morning program. We had a late morning program when we finally got up. Therefore, when I was on Radha Damodar, our schedule was not so regulated. But the temple devotees at that time, there was a very fixed morning program for everyone. As a matter of fact, if someone missed Mangalarti in the temples, we were told that you had at breakfast you had to stand up and ask for forgiveness for missing Mangalarti. And then Prabhupada said that we should go out and distribute one Krishna book if you miss Mangalarti. Therefore, for a long time, when Prabhupada was present, everyone was engaged in sadhana bhakti once and usually twice a day. There would be a morning and evening program. And the grihastas generally lived either in the temples or they lived in a house near the temple. So even the grihastas were expected to come to the full morning program. Now, after Srila Prabhupada left, and after we had some problems within our society, many devotees moved on the outside. They became what was known as congregational devotees. And sometimes the devotees would have the temples would have very minimum number of devotees who generally kept up the morning program anyhow. But we found in some of our temples when many of the devotees who were formerly living there left, and the temples were established on the basis of a big temple community, that many devotees living in the temple and many devotees living around the temple. And then what we had was sometimes 3 sets of deities in the temple. Gaur Nitai deities, Radha Krishna deities, Lord Jagannath, Lord Baladev, Srimati Subhadra Maharani, or few temples, a couple of temples, it would be, as in the temple I'm here now in Chosica in Peru, there is Sita, Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman. And and here in this temple even now, sometimes the temple president would have to dress all 3 sets of deities in the morning, which is probably equal to having a 3-hour Mangalarti. A lot of mercy for the temple president, but quite a engaging service. Now, what has actually changed when the devotees moved out of the temple and became congregational devotees? Many times their occupations were demanding that they have to go to their work at all different types of the day. And therefore, it became and that also sometimes one devotee, one member of the family would be devotional, the other one would lose their taste for devotional service. The children were not necessarily very enthusiastic when they grow up to engage in temple and to engage in sadhana bhakti. And therefore, many devotees that get initiated, it was assumed that they were chanting their 16 rounds a day, at least until they got initiated. And then sometimes that would slacken after some time. And it seemed like in some parts of the world, in some temples, that the idea of causeless mercy became more prominent than it was during Prabhupada's time. I never, when Prabhupada was here, heard anything about getting causeless mercy from Prabhupada and making spiritual advancement on that basis. Although in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada talked about it, that sometimes one may stay at home and by some mercy get a PhD awarded to him from a university. But I don't know if anyone that has ever happened to. And besides that, people are awarded honorary PhD degrees. They usually have done something extraordinary in some other field or in some field of activity. They just didn't stay at home, and the university had a lottery and their name got picked for a PhD degree. That's not how one gets that degree. Similarly, devotional service, to become conscious of Krishna, requires a lot more than someone just winning the lottery. It requires, as it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravanam Kirtana, that every day to engage in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Srinvatam Swakata Punya Shravanam Kirtana, Ridyan Takso Habidrani Vidunoti Srichitam, that every day is just necessary. As I've said before, just like every day, most of us take prasadam once, twice, 3 times, maybe more times a day. Now, none of us would probably be very enthusiastic to only eat once a week. Or what to speak of once every Janmashtami. I don't think we'd make it to Janmashtami alive if that was our regulation. I vow every Janmashtami I'll come to the temple. And when I come to the temple, that's the only time I'll eat during the year. It would probably be a very extreme vow, probably on the level of Dhruva Maharaj. But most of us are not prepared to take such a vow. Similarly, the soul also needs food, spiritual food. Right now, most souls are starving from spiritual food. And therefore, they're always looking for something to make them happy. And it doesn't matter how much we eat, how much we sleep, how much we mate, or how much we defend ourselves, how secure we may imagine ourselves to be. No one in this material universe, according to Krishna at least, because he has a better perspective on the universe than we have. But he says from the highest planet down to the lowest, they're all places of misery when repeated birth and death take place. But those who obtain to my abode never take birth again. So we're not on the lowest planet, and we're certainly not on the highest planet. But if on the highest planet, they're not unlimitedly always happy, I don't think we can expect on this planet to feel unlimited happiness that goes on forever either, as without coming to a platform of going beyond our normal, or what's considered the normal activities in the material world, namely eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So the idea is that the food that we have is chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, worshiping the deities, serving the devotees, and trying to make our heart and our atmosphere in which we live spiritual. That's food for the soul. We're not this gross material energy, we're the fine, unlimitedly, well, eternal, conscious, seeking happiness and love spiritual being. And the only place the only way the soul can actually be nourished begins with hearing about Krishna. Hearing about Krishna means to hear who we actually are and how to realize who we actually are. To realize who Krishna is and to know how to realize, to experience Krishna, to become conscious of him, to know who everyone else is, and to know how to appropriately deal with them, so to help us become conscious of Krishna and conscious of our real identity and conscious of everyone else's real identity. After all, if we were in the spiritual world, there's very few people that we think would be bad association. Of course, there's some sentiment in the spiritual world where Srimati Radharani has her camp, Chandravali has her camp, but actually there's no real animosity between them. There's just some transcendental sentiment of competition to please Krishna. There's no envy in the spiritual world. There may be externally some appearance of conflict, just like Srimati Radharani and Chandra they're both sisters. So here in the material world, we have sisters fighting all the time too, but ultimately they're friends. Therefore, to come to that platform, there's a simple formula, the formula that's described. We may not appreciate it, but that's what we want to do, is really come to hear why we should appreciate it, why we should be willingly to go through the austerity of even chanting Hare Krishna when we don't want to chant Hare Krishna. Why should we go through the austerity of getting up early as possible? Because everyone has their situation, so it's not that we have to artificially try to imitate those who are living in the temple, who don't have a job, don't have a family, don't have obligations. But we should know somehow or another, if not a full morning program, at least 5 minutes. Something should be there every day. But every day, so that gradually we do get some inspiration to come to a position where we can have a reasonable morning program with the idea that the morning program should help fix our minds upon Krishna during that program. In other words, it's important to know what the objective of the program is. We're getting up early, we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're worshiping the deities, we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, we're serving the devotees, if only by hearing them chant Hare Krishna, and then our chanting Hare Krishna to them. And we're trying to purify our hearts and make the atmosphere spiritual. The idea is so we can actually become conscious of Krishna. Now, of course, we have to develop a transcendental vision, first of all, which is not that we have to The transcendental vision doesn't mean we see Krishna with his gopis in Vrindavan. Transcendental vision means in the very place where we're living right now, where we are right now, we remember that everything here belongs to Krishna. Nothing here belongs to me or to anyone else. It all belongs to Krishna. My body also belongs to Krishna. And ultimately, I also belong to Krishna. So that's called transcendental vision. It doesn't require that we reorganize our whole house or sell our house and move to another one, or go to another place, or change our ashram to become conscious of Krishna. No, we just accept where I am right now. Everything here belongs to Krishna. And all I do is have to think about what I should do right now in Krishna service. It doesn't require we read some esoteric literature and realize that actually I'm a blade of grass in Goloka Vrindavan and become so disturbed that I give up Krishna consciousness because I don't want people to step on me forever. No, or that I find out I'm a gopi, but I'm just a subordinate gopi. I'm not one of the 8 principal gopis, and I also become disappointed that there's no upward movement in Goloka Vrindavan. Whatever position we have forever there. No, it doesn't require this. Even if we found out I'm a happy cowherd boy in Goloka Vrindavan, it doesn't require any of that information to make spiritual advancement. Those things will be automatically revealed to us in the course of time. What is important, though, is to have the vision that everything where I am belongs to Krishna. And whatever I touch because I know this is what Krishna wants me to touch at this particular time. This is what he wants me to do. This is how he'd like me to think. This is what he would like me to say. And then to do that. Of course, what he wants me to do, what he wants me to say, what he wants me to think, should be according to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Therefore, we should know what Guru says, what Shastra says, and what Sadhu says. And they should all be in line. Because Krishna is speaking in Shastra, Krishna is speaking through Guru, Krishna is also speaking through Sadhu. And Krishna is not schizophrenic. It's not that he has one message within our heart, but someone else speaks his message, but Krishna changed his mind when someone else is about to tell us something. Or a guru is in line with Shastra and with Krishna in the heart, but Sadhu has something else to say. Just like one devotee said, I had a dream last night and Krishna came to tell me that I'm supposed to become the head of the Hare Krishna movement. And then another devotee said, well, that's interesting, because I also had a dream last night, and Krishna came to me and told me to tell you that actually he didn't tell you that you're supposed to become the head of the Hare Krishna movement. So we're already dreaming. When we go to sleep at night, our dreams are not necessarily any more real than our present dream. Even if we have a dream and we think it's Krishna conscious, then it should also be in line with the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Then, if we have that vision and practical vision that everything belongs to Krishna, one time one of the devotees put up a Bhagavad Gita in his hand, and in the Bhagavad Gita was a crumbled disheveled, uh, broken Bhagavad Gita. And he said, this is Krishna's Bhagavad Gita. And then he held up his Bhagavad Gita, immaculate Bhagavad Gita, nicely covered, decorative covered, perfect, no folded pages, nothing cut. And he said, this is my Bhagavad Gita. So it's not that everything belongs to Krishna, so whatever I do with Krishna's energy, no problem. Krishna's rich, he can afford it. But for myself, I don't have so much unlimited opulence, so I'm very careful with my things. In Krishna's car, I drive with my eyes closed. Because even if there's some accident, Krishna will have to pay for it. No, we should take care. We cannot make any advancement in Krishna consciousness with that attitude. Because the attitude of Krishna consciousness begins with the attitude of care and attention. We can't develop love for someone unless we deal with them with attention and very carefully. To establish any positive relationship with anyone, we have to listen to them carefully, or attentively and carefully. Generally speaking, people, as I'm not that experienced, but I think relationships between men and wife and husband often becomes problematic when the wife or the husband stop hearing from each other. And even if they hear from each other, they don't take very seriously what the other person says, so they never do anything. The wife tells the husband, my dear husband, can you please take out the garbage? And the husband said, of course, dear. And 2 days go by, no garbage is taken out. And the wife inquires from the husband, could you please take out the garbage? And the husband says, of course, my dear. And a week goes by, the garbage is still there. And the wife says, why can't you take out the garbage? He said, and the husband replies, because I love you so much, dear, I can't even move from where I am. The wife will probably not think, oh, my husband's so much in love with me. Therefore, I should take out the garbage and do everything else because he's stunned with love. He can't move. So Krishna also expects us to do some service. But that service should be on the basis that everything here belongs to Krishna. And no matter what service I do for Krishna, it's not that there's any possibility at all, either now or in the future, that anything is going to independently belong to me. That somehow or another, by my years of service in the Hare Krishna movement, finally Krishna says, my dear soul, I'm awarding you your own planet, and I'm leaving. I won't be in any atom anymore on that planet. It's all yours to take care of. As a matter of fact, I've decided I'm going to leave your heart too, and good luck with remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. No, that's not possible. Knowledge means to understand, not just theoretic, but just not because someone tells us that everything belongs to Krishna. But it's essential that we understand how everything belongs to Krishna. So it doesn't become just a forced meditation with the idea, unfortunately, quote, unfortunately, everything belongs to Krishna. And therefore, I'm working so hard for Krishna, but I'm not getting anything in return. Just like the devotees Distributing books, many times we were very enthusiastic, those who were doing it. But when they switched over to paintings, devotees would go out, probably with not the same enthusiasm, or maybe with the same enthusiasm, to sell paintings or other type of paraphernalia like that. And some of them became quite expert, gaining hundreds of dollars, or if not thousands of dollars, selling paintings. And then they thought, well, I'm giving all the money to the temple. I have no sadhana. I have no taste for Krishna consciousness. I hardly believe in Krishna anymore. So why should I waste my energy selling paintings which have no spiritual value for me, for anyone else? Why shouldn't I just set up my own business and sell paintings and keep all the profit for myself? And instead of giving it to the kingdom of Krishna, I can give it to my own kingdom. And of course, because I'm a devotee, every Janmashtami I'll come and give Krishna a birthday present. Put something in the donation box. Just so my painting business goes well. That's not exactly what we're trying to achieve in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one will not be able to work selflessly for Krishna unless one has some experience of Krishna, unless the world comes alive and reflects that everything here belongs to Krishna. Now, in book distribution, one can see how Krishna fulfills desires quite quickly. I remember going on book distribution with some of the most expert book distributors in the movement at that time, and there was intense competition for distributing books. So I'd sometimes be in the airport with these devotees and watch them distribute a book and think that if they distribute this book, then I'm going to lose the top position as a book distributor. So a subtle prayer would come to my mind, please, Krishna, don't let him sell the book. But after some time, well, actually what would happen, he'd usually sell the book. And then I developed this intense desire to distribute a book myself. And then Krishna would send someone to me because of the intense desire to serve Krishna in that way. Krishna would send someone, I'd sell the book too. And then I realized, of course, after some time, this desire, this prayer to Krishna, that please don't let this conditioned soul take the book, and then I'll lose the competition. I realized this was not a very good prayer, not very devotional. So then I just have the prayer that let me sell a book. That seemed to work out much better for my consciousness. As a matter of fact, just from my own experience, when I went to a place called Houston, Texas, 1971, and the only income we had, possible income, we had no supporters, we had no money. The only way we could make any money was to sell Back to Godhead on the street. Now, at that time, there was no question of wearing anything except for a dhoti with tilak and a shaven head, because we had nothing else except for that. Nor do we had any idea that we should have anything else or present ourselves in any other way except with a shaven head, tilak, and a dhoti. Unfortunately, in Houston, Texas, there were what was called rednecks or cowboys, especially at that time. Anyone who looked a little bit different was not appreciated very much in that particular city. But still we had to distribute something. Now I was with a devotee named Vishnu Jan Maharaj, and he had no idea how to sell anything. He sung like an angel, but he sold things like how the Jehovah's Witnesses sell things. They stand in the street and open their magazine and don't say a word to anyone else and hope that someone will come by and take the magazine. Not the most efficient way of selling something, especially when you look like you've come from Mars. Most people were from some other part of the universe. Most people in Houston, Texas weren't interested. Nor did we have our techniques of how to stop people in those circumstances. So my technique at that time was to simply pray to Krishna to send someone. And under the circumstances, since Krishna didn't want to see his devotees starve to death, then generally he sent someone to take a magazine, simply on the basis of prayer. Needless to say, we didn't gain big donations or anything, but we did have enough to buy prasadam and to provide things for the temple. In any case, the point is that by practical experience, somehow or another we have to develop faith that Krishna is actually the controller, which implies he's actually the proprietor. Then we might develop more interest in trying to do something which is in the proper consciousness. Understanding that Guru Sadhana Shastra, with the help of the super soul within our heart, should be the guiding principle in everything we're doing. Then eventually we'll develop the feeling that when we start appreciating how kind Krishna is, I should do my activities in a way that's pleasing to him. We may not fall over in ecstasy when we offer an incense to Krishna, but we should do it carefully, with care and attention. That's the beginning of love. And when that care and attention expands, then when we actually become more conscious of Krishna, we become more consistent in our service and more careful in how we do it, then gradually our natural love for Krishna will awaken as our awareness of Krishna awakens. And that's called Krishna consciousness, which is our goal. So, thank you. I'll stop here. Any questions? Agnihotra?
Хари Кришна, Гуру Махарадж. Спасибо вам большое за такую глубокую лекцию. Вы на лекции рассказали об истории ИСККОНа, о ваших ранних годах, говорили о внимательности к другим преданным, о внимательности мужа и жены. И вот в «Нектаре наставлений» 4 стих есть 2 вида любовных взаимоотношений между преданными.
Lavanga Latte, you can translate all that?
Yes, I can follow Maharaj, no problem. Let him finish.
Okay.
Я почти закончил. В «Нектаре преданности» в 4 стихе 2 вида любовных взаимоотношений, как преданные поверяют свои мысли и спрашивают о сокровенном. И вот не могли бы вы, пожалуйста, рассказать, какова культура тайной исповеди в ИСККОН, как это было раньше и к чему, скажем так, GBC пытается развивать в нашем обществе эту культуру, как правильно наставники, лидеры, президенты храма, духовные учителя должны относиться к тайне исповеди преданного, чтобы доверие сохранялось и была чистота. В этом моменте это присутствует во многих религиях, тайна исповеди, и как существует в ИСККОН. Я на эту тему, к сожалению, не так много именно в этом контексте слышал.
So, Maharaj, you have said so much about your early years, how you were practicing in your early years, the relationship between the devotees, and especially often you speak of the six loving exchanges, which are described in the fourth verse of Upadeshamrita. And usually we have a lot of information about the first two, but the last two, that is very common in other religions, which is the sacrament of uh, opening up your heart, the sacrament of um, confidential opening of the heart to the mentor or to the spiritual guide. How do you experience this personally in your life in the movement, and how is GBC now explaining this sacrament, how it should be handled uh, by the authorities such as temple president or the people who is in the positions of mentorship, how this confidential sacrament should be performed in ISKCON to actually be a sacrament that is described by Rupa Goswami.
Well, every day in our temples or online, someone is giving class. Therefore, when they give class, they reveal what they know about, what their realizations, their experiences in Krishna consciousness are. And the audience is listening. So that's called revealing your mind in confidence. And sometimes the devotees ask questions. That's inquiring confidentially. And sometimes the devotees just listen. But that's also inquiring confidentially. Inquiring, what do you have to say about Krishna, about devotional service that can help me become Krishna conscious? So just listening to a class is also inquiring confidentially. Now, devotees may have this idea that inquiring confidentially means I say whatever nonsense is in my heart. I usually keep it confidential, but now I'm going to reveal it to you that I hate you. Please keep that confidential. That's not what confidential means. We tell people whatever's on our mind, or whatever we don't want anyone else to hear. No, confidential means about Brahman is confidential. More confidential than Brahman is Paramatma. And more confidential than that is Bhagavan realizations. Those are the confidential, more confidential, and the most confidential. And that's what we should be talking about between devotees. That's Parashparam. And the result should be either satisfaction, alleviation from material consciousness, or a transcendental happiness when one becomes more advanced in revealing our minds and inquiring. After all, 7 days, 7 nights, Shukadeva Goswami, a Pariksha Maharaj inquired from Shukadeva Goswami. That's the ideal inquiries that are in between someone inquiring confidentially and these loving exchanges, inquiring confidentially and revealing one's mind confidentially. So that friendship has to be developed. Generally, the friendship can be developed if devotees have, for instance, small groups where they discuss with each other their realizations. Going to a temple all the time is not possible. Or service together and talking about their service together. How to perform artis and service to Krishna as a pujari, how to distribute books, how to cook together. So those are all bases of confidential exchanges, inquiries and confidential exchanges between devotees also. All right, I think we'll stop there because it's pretty late. Thank you very much. Krantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande Haribol.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you so much,
Hare
Guru
Krishna,
Maharaj.
Hare
Guru
Krishna.
Maharaj.
Jai.
Hare Krishna,
Gracias,
dear.
Kumari.
Hare
Que la
Krishna.
pases bien en Perú.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, all of you.
Hare Krishna.